Hey everybody, happy Monday. Today is August 31st, 2020, and it is our 6th day of Unit 0. Don't forget to close out of all your tabs to help your video load faster, and I will be checking through GoGuardian to make sure that all of our tabs are closed and that we're only on either Zoom, our video, or the Google Slides that I shared that we have to edit for today. And then remembering our virtual class norms, remember to keep your camera on as much as possible, make sure you're in a well-lit quiet space, mute when you finish speaking, write questions and on-task comments in the chat, be fully engaged throughout each class, remember that our sessions are being recorded, and if you or your teacher loses connection, remain calm and rejoin the call. And since it's Monday, the first day of week, we're going to remember our credit values. Just as a reminder, we do this every week, and just so that we can keep our credit values top of mind going into the week. Moving on, and here are our reminders for the week. Remember that all assignments are due at 5 p.m. If you cannot make this deadline, please call the school to let them know why you cannot make this deadline. So last week we were pretty lenient on the deadlines, but this week we are going to stick to this 5 p.m. rule, and if you can't make it, please have your parent or your guardian call the school so that they can know why, and then they will let me know whether or not I'm able to give you an extension. Also, I will be assigning the exit ticket after this live session, so if you haven't seen it yet, that's why, because I've been having people not attend class or not even watch the video before they take the exit ticket, and then their exit ticket score is not as good as the student scores that attended the live session, or I know they watched the video before. So if you didn't attend our live session today, you will have an ed puzzle to complete before you are able to take the exit ticket. And then our objectives for the day. All right, let's get started. So our first thing we're going to talk about today is multiplying by taking out factors of 10.
To do in this video is think about multiplying or strategies for multiplying numbers that are expressed in terms of hundreds or thousands or tens. And so we see an example right over here. We have 800 times 400. Now, like always, I encourage you to pause this video and see if you can work this out on your own. Now let's work this through together. And I'm going to work it out in a way that at least my head likes to tackle it. And once you get enough practice, you might even be able to do these types of multiplication problems without even needing to use paper. So the key realization here is to say, well, look, this is 8 hundreds. So that's the same thing as 8 times 100. And this over here is 4 hundreds. So this is 4 times 100. And so it's 8 times 100 times 4 times 100. And if you're multiplying a bunch of numbers like this, you can switch the order in which you're doing the multiplication. So you can view this as 8 times 4, 8 times 4 times 100 times 100 times 100 times 100 times 100. Now, why is this easier? Well, what is 8 times 4 going to be? Well, 8 times 4, if we know our times tables, is 32. And so it's going to be 32 times, what's 100 times 100 going to be? Now, there's multiple ways that you could think about this, and I want you to really think it through, but we'll soon see that there's a fairly fast way of making sure we got it right. But one way to think about it is, well, let me do it over here. 10 times 100 is equal to 1,000. And so 100 times 100 is going to be 10 times that, or it's going to be equal to 10,000. So this stuff right over here is equal to 10,000. Now you might notice something interesting here. I have 2 zeros and then another 2 zeros, so I have a total of 4 zeros, and then I have 4 zeros here. Because every time you multiply by 10, you're going to add another 0. So if you're multiplying by 100, you're going to add 2 zeros. If you're multiplying by 1,000, you're going to add 3 zeros. And you see that here. So you have 32 times 10,000, which is going to be what? Well, let's see, 32 times 1,000 would be 32,000, but this is 32 times 10,000. So it's going to be 320,000. Now you might already notice an interesting pattern here. 32 times 1 followed by 4 zeros is 32 followed by 4 zeros. This is 32 10,000s, which is 320,000. Now another way you could have thought about it is 8 times 4 gives us our 32. And then we have 2 zeros there, 2 zeros there for a total of 4 zeros. And we have our 4 zeros right over there. Now, I don't want you to just memorize that. It works because this is 8 hundreds times 4 hundreds. 8 times 4 gives us the 32. And then the 100 times the hundreds, that's where these 4 zeros come from. Let's do a
So to summarize that whole video, our first step in multiplying by taking out factors of 10 is to first factor out multiples of 10. Then we group the multiples of 10. Then we multiply the group that is not a multiple of 10. And then we add our zeros to step 3 based on the amount of zeros in the multiples of 10 group. Alright, so now we're going to do this with an example. So our first step is to factor out multiples of 10. For our example, 20 times 600. So if we're answering our 20 times 600 and we're going to factor out multiples of 10, that would turn into 2 times 10 times 6 times 100. And the reason I chose that is because 6 is in the hundreds place, so that means we have 6 hundreds. And then for 2 is in the tens place, so we know that we have 2 tens. So that makes our answer 2 times 10 times 6 times 100. So we're only on the first step. So we've completed the first step, and now we're going to go to the second step, which is group the multiples of 10. So this was our answer in the previous one for step 1, and now I'm going to give us our answer for step 2. Just for the sake of time, I'm not going to write it out. And then it would turn into 2 times 6 times 10 times 100. So we group the multiples of 10, and then everything else we group together. Next, we'll go to step 3. So we're going to multiply the group that is not a factor of 10. So the group that is not a factor of 10 is 2 times 6, so that would be 12. Then we go on, and then we count add our zeros in step 3 based on the amount of zeros in the multiples of 10 group. So our multiples of 10 group has 3 zeros, so we're going to add 3 zeros to 12. So later on, or you can write it down right now, you're going to click in your Google Slides and then put the answer to the question that I just asked. So it would just be the answer to 20 times 600, which is 12 and 3 zeros. And that would equal to 12,000. All right, moving on, we're going to go into multiplying multi-digit numbers.
Fortunately, we can start the same way we would if the bottom number only had one digit by just ignoring the second digit until we finish the first 3 steps. All right, so our first multiplication step is 6 times 4, which is 24. And since 24 has 2 digits, we can leave the 4 in our answer line, but we need to carry the 2 and put it above the next top digit that we're going to multiply. So the next step is 6 times 2, which is 12. But we have to add in the 2 that we carried, so 12 plus 2 gives us 14. That's another 2-digit answer, so we leave the 4 in our answer line and carry the 1 up above the next digit that we're going to multiply. And our third step is 6 times 3, which is 18, and then we add in the 1 that we carried, and we get 19. This time we can leave both digits of the 19 in our answer line because there's no more multiplication steps to do. Well, at least there's no more steps for the first digit. Remember, we still have that other bottom digit that we've been ignoring. Now we have to multiply it by each of the top digits also, which means we have 3 more steps to do. It also means that we'll get a second answer. And because we'll get a second answer, we need to start a second answer line for the next set of steps. we're going to put our new answer line just below the first one. So this answer line comes from our first bottom digit, and this answer line will come from our second bottom digit. At the very end, after we're all done multiplying, we're going to add the two answers together. But for now, let's continue with the second set of multiplication steps. Oh, and I almost forgot to tell you, there's something very important that you need to do when you start the second set of steps. Because the second digit of the bottom number is in the tens place, that means that even though the digit's only a 4, its value is really 40. That's 10 times bigger, so the answer we get should also be 10 times bigger. So before we start multiplying, we need to put a 0 in the first spot of our answer line so it's 10 times bigger. That means that all the other answer digits we put there are shifted to the next bigger number place. And just so you know, if we happen to have a third bottom digit, we would get a third answer line, and we need to shift the third answer over by 2 zeros, because it would be 100 times bigger. And if we had a fourth digit, there'd be a fourth answer line shifted over by 3 zeros. And if we had a fifth bottom digit, there'd be a fifth answer line shifted over by 4 zeros. See the pattern? Boy, am I glad we've only got 2 bottom digits. And now you see why we always put the number with the fewest digits on the bottom when we're multiplying. But let's continue with our problem. Let's do the first step of our second bottom digit. We multiply that digit, 4, by the ones place digit of the top number, which is also a 4. 4 times 4 gives us 16, and that goes in our second answer line, right next to the extra 0 we put there. Now remember, because 16 is a 2-digit answer, we have to carry. And we always put the digit we carry above the next top digit that we'll multiply. But before we can carry it up to that place, we need to cross out all the digits that we carried from our first answer line, because we've already used them. We don't want to accidentally add them to our second answer line. There. So now we can carry our 1 to the top of the tens place, which means it will go in the column above this 2, because that's the next top digit that will multiply with our bottom digit. Now we can do the next multiplication step. 4 times 2 gives us 8, and then we'll add the 1 that we carried, and we get 9. Great! Finally a 1-digit answer, so we don't have to carry this time. We just write the 9 in the next place of our answer line and move on to the next step. The next and last multiplication step is 4 times 3, which is 12. And since there's no more steps, we can write both digits in our second answer line. All right, we're finally done with all our multiplication steps. We multiplied each bottom digit by each top digit, just like we were supposed to. But now what do? We have 2 answer lines, but this is just one multiplication problem. Well, remember, the reason we have 2 answer lines is that we're pretending that we're doing 2 separate multiplication problems. We treated it like it was 6 times 324 and 4 times 324. But since the 4 was in the tens place, we had to put an extra 0 in our second answer, since it would really be the answer from 40 times 324. Now, as I mentioned earlier, all we have to do to get the final answer is add those 2 answers together. And the great news is that those answers are already stacked up like an addition problem should be. So we can just draw a line below them and stick a plus sign on the left side. Now,
Sorry about that. So he goes through and adds them all together. So give me just a second. So if we add 4 and 0 together, that would be 4. And then we'd have 6 plus 4 is 10. We'd carry 1 up there. So then that would be 18 and then 19. We put another 1 on top, and I'm adding up here. I'm just doing over here. So 9 is 18 plus 1, 19. And then 2 plus 1 is 3, 4. So we get 14,904. Next, for our final objective, it's estimating multi-digit multiplication. And we'll go through this real quick just for the sake of time. Our steps are round the numbers you are multiplying to the nearest whole number, and then we multiply it by taking out factors of 10. Just like how we learned at the beginning of this video. Alright, so for this example, we are going to estimate 589 times 219. So my first step is to round both numbers to the nearest whole number. So I'm going to round 589 to 600 because 8 is 5 or more. And I'm going to round 219 to 200 because 1 is 4 or less in the tens place. So then I'm going to group multiply by using my by taking out factors of 10. So this would turn into 6 times 2 times 100 times 100. And then that would turn into 12. And then I'm going to add my zeros. So then I add 1, 2, 3, 4, 120,000. Our answer is C. That's the end of our video today. Don't forget to finish the independent practice in these slides. Once you're done, go ahead and turn in the slides, and then that's when I'll know to assign you the exit ticket. Then take the exit ticket on Elastic. If you have any trouble, G-chat me. Truman State, your next class is at 10:20, and UCO, your next class is at 12. And don't forget to stay in the Zoom call if you'd like to work on the independent practice with Mr. Juarez.